Good morning, everyone. As most of you know, I've been away for a little more than 2 months, and it's very nice to be back. I've been on a traveling teaching tour in Europe. On Tuesday evening, for those of you who may be interested, I'll talk much more about it. But I first just wanted to say how happy I am to be back. We have a beautiful family here. We have a beautiful family around the world, but this one is particularly dear to me after so many years together. So, here we are with the wise and the foolish ones again, which we roll around. For those of you who've been doing this as long as I have, at the beginning of every December, we get to be reminded what it is to fail spiritually. Just at the time when we're wanting to be really cheerful and optimistic, we get to hear this one. It was actually replaced in the sequence because it used to always come on Swami's birthday, which was also really unfortunate. You'd be up here celebrating his birthday and you'd be talking about what it is to fail spiritually. So somebody plucked it and put it here, but I would have put it not at Christmas. I would have put it somewhere else, but what choice do I have? So today I have some nicer things to say about this than I sometimes do. You know, I always just feel bad for those poor foolish virgins, and that clouds my thinking about the whole thing. They were so sincere. When Swamiji first built his home at Ayodhya, at Ananda village, the second geodesic dome he built. This was in the early 70s when these geodesic domes made out of all these triangles put together were very new. And they worked beautifully, except for the fact that they moved a lot during the heat and the cold of the day, so there were always hairline cracks, which meant that when the rain came, the rain would just go into those cracks. And so his house just literally leaked like a sieve. So much rain would come in those years it rained so much. He had, the house was, now it's Crystal Hermitage, and it's very lovely. Then it was very simple. So there was a wooden floor, and the house was on a hillside, so there was a platform. And there was a huge trap door in the floor, and then you'd go down the stairs, and the wood for the wood fire was kept downstairs. So you would just open the living room floor, you'd go down, you'd get the wood and put it in. It rained so much into that we would open the door and we would sweep the water out of the house. And Swami tried one thing after another. And finally what happened is, and what he kept saying all along is, we have to build a carport for the house, basically. And if you go to Crystal Hermitage now, if you look, you can actually see where the dome is, and then they just built a roof over it, and that worked. That was the only thing that worked. It got less terrible than it started. But I remember in the context of that, now I have to also add that Swamiji had this marvelous way of taking an attitude that a person might be inclined to have seriously and use to make you feel victimized and sad, and then he would make fun of it at a time when no one was feeling victimized and sad, so that you could sort of hear the humor of it. And it was a perfect technique for us to work for ourselves. One, because if you can be just a little more lighthearted about your own traumas, that's one of the ways in which you can begin to overcome them. In order to be able to see the humor in something, you have to have a flexible enough perspective on reality. That's what a lot of humor is, isn't it? That there is the way things are, but you move back a quarter of an inch and it twists, and then all of a sudden a new picture emerges. So Swamiji would often take what we would take seriously, make it funny when it could be funny, and then later, when you were gripping it to your heart with anguishing monotony, then you couldn't be quite so serious about it. So Swamiji, I remember one day when the rain was pouring in, he said like this to Master, to Divine Mother, "But I'm so sincere in my prayers. You know, I keep praying, to this house be fixed, and I'm so sincere." And then the water keeps pouring in, as if the rain cared about how sincere he was. But I've always remembered that, because it's a very true story, isn't it? And this is what happens. Here are the ones who are doing the right thing and really doing it, and here are the others who have all the accoutrements. They have their little lamps, they have their little costumes, they have their names. You know, we are the 5 virgins, you are the 5 virgins, and we're all just seemingly doing the same thing, but some of them are really doing it. And others are just thinking about many other things. And it's not, you know, unreasonable that they would be thinking about many other things. There's so much that goes on in this world that we're asked to do. The most interesting thing for me, the contrast between traveling and being somewhere else and being here, is that when I'm somewhere else, I have no responsibilities except just to show up and essentially do this, which is what I'm doing here. You know, other people drive, and in many cases, other people speak for me because I don't speak the language. They have to translate what I say. They cook, they feed me, they take me places. I don't know what the schedule is, nothing. I love it. I'm like the UPS package, you know? I have an address written on me and they just move me. And there's no point in the package having an opinion, you know? Like, I'm only vaguely aware of what the arrangements are or where we're going or what's happening. I was in a car in Rome just the day before I got on the plane. And for some reason, I was picked, the timing was such that a different car had to pick me up. And 4 lovely people who didn't speak hardly any English. And so I'm in the car with people that I can't communicate at all with. They're very lively talking to each other. And something was happening. It turned out there were political rallies, and so all the accustomed roads were closed. And I could tell that there was a bit of a crisis happening because I was supposed to be in the lecture hall standing up, and the time was getting shorter and shorter like this. But what could I do? You know, I'm the package, and the truck has a flat tire or doesn't know where it is. Just nothing, just as free as that. So I could keep my mind on one thing, which is why not just be happy? Because I was helpless, then there was really no choice. I come back here to the country where I speak the language, I know the systems. Nobody drives me. Nobody feeds me. No, that's not entirely true. I'm infrequently fed by others. You know, and I have the illusion, that I'm in charge. I'm no more in charge just because I have to grocery shop than I am when people are taking care of me. But I have the habit of thinking that I'm in charge of my life here. You know, I remember I've shared with you, some of you before, when I was still living at Ananda village in the very early years and working in the publications building. And the publications building was kind of only half finished, but it was finished enough for us to use. And we had a very loose relationship with building codes at that time, so we could occupy it in that condition. So there were a lot of the creatures kind of lived in that house, in that office with us. And this is completely not where I was going, but we had this paper picture of Master on the wall for a long time, and it had been there a really long time and was getting to look shabby, so we took it down, and it turned out that it was a little house for bats. And the bats were all living happily behind it, but they only came out when we weren't in the building, except we took their house down. And I'm sure bats are very interesting to people who study bats. But to a person like me, they're creepy, is the only thing I could think of. It. There was kind of an hysterical cycle while we had all the bats flying around. And finally, we thought we had dealt with all the bats. And I went into my little office, and I start writing something like this. And a bat falls right, like right where I'm writing. Apparently, what I did was I got up, I picked up a cardboard box, I put it over the bat, and then I began to scream just like crazy. It's just odd, in the moment. I was powerful, but once it was settled, anyway, but I was also in that office, and I had a typewriter. This was before computers. And there was a little spider on my typewriter, and it was a super energetic little spider. Maybe I'm projecting, but he had a lot of attitude, really. He was good. And he was going one like this on the typewriter, then down here and across, and then up again. And I just felt powerful. And I put my thumb like that, because he was tiny. I put my thumb and I thought, at any moment, it's over for you. Like I could. And I followed him around like this for a while. Then, the woo-woo music started. And I felt the thumb of Divine Mother right above my head. And I saw myself having walked over to my office this morning, with a lot of attitude. And she was just following me with her thumb like that. And I could just hear her going, any moment, honey. You think you're in charge? You think you have so much power? You think you're making all the decisions? Really? Let's get real about this. We are, yes, the masters of our destiny in the sense that it is our own response to life that creates the magnetism, that creates the energy that draws to us exactly what we need. Not necessarily exactly what we want. And that's where we get confused. We think being in charge means I get what I want. No, actually, we get what we need, which is very, very different. And what we need is we need to understand the nature of reality. We need to understand the power and the presence of the divine at all times. And we need to know who we really are. And we barely know it. We just barely know it. We have this idea and we have this philosophy, and in moments we transcend. There's just no question. In moments we transcend, but then we fall back. We're the wise virgins going along doing everything, and then we get distracted. And we start doing something else. We put the lamp on the shelf, and the oil goes out of it, and we haven't really noticed. But the way, what comes to us is always exactly what is going to be helpful to us for what our heart really wants. And what our heart really wants is this list that we've made of comfort and sympathy, and we want other people to understand how vulnerable I am because of the things that happened to me, and all of that is true. But all of that is completely untrue at the same time, because we are one with the infinite spirit. So when I'm in a car with 4 people who don't speak my language in a city I don't know about, oh my gosh, and they're driving like, guess what, like Italians drive, oh my word, just whizzing through all of that. And a large part of me wants to participate, in my own destiny. But I'm completely without power to do it. So I come back here, and I think I am really in charge of my own destiny. But, yes, to this extent, because we do have to act. God's will is not that we just be passive like a lump of clay. That does not create the magnetism that will draw to us what we need to become free. We have to put out the best energy we can, but the best energy is not about what we do and how we protest and how we look and all of that. The best energy is the oil of the lamp, which is what is my worldview? What is really true? Where does power really come from? What is happiness? What really causes me to suffer? And the paradox of it all is that joy and suffering all exist in this stew of human life. It's so impressive to me. A couple of stories that I've heard and repeat because I'm always trying to understand it. Sri Ramakrishna, who was a great avatar of India, he lived in the late 1800s. And he was a very unusual man, and he was a Brahmin, and he lived in this temple outside of Calcutta, Dakshineshwar, which is dedicated to Mother Kali. And because he was not of ordinary consciousness, he had an attendant, his caretaker, almost literally, was his nephew Hridai. And Hridai and he were very close, and Hridai took care of him. He fed him, he took him around, he kept him grounded, he took care of the package. And then Hridai died. And Ramakrishna told his disciples, oh, at the moment that he stopped breathing, his soul rose like a flash of light up into the infinite, and then Ramakrishna would dance in ecstasy, just talking about the passing of his nephew. You know, death is something that, from the human side, we feel like something is lost. Master put it in the most interesting way. A funeral in this world is a celebrated birth in the astral world. A birth in this world is a funeral in the astral world. Because we're leaving and we're going, and we're leaving and we're going, and we have as many on both sides that we love. So there is a poignancy to it. It's not without its human dimension, but it's just this endless, not what it really seems. And then Ramakrishna, after dancing in ecstasy about Hridai's freedom, then he would begin to weep, and his moods were without filter. He would weep like a child. Who will bring me my tea in the morning? Who will walk with me by the Ganges? Who will sit with me in the evening light? And he would just sob. And then all of a sudden, he would go into the other side. You know, so we can't just make this simple. We can't just say, oh, this is the way it is, that's the way it is, I will be austere. Sometimes we pretend that we're detached, but we're not detached. We're just uncommitted. We're afraid. Because once you commit yourself, you know, you're vulnerable then, aren't you? So the freedom we're looking for is not the freedom of fear. The freedom is, whatever you want, Lord, send it to me. I remember once when I was in a critical decision point in my life, and I was afraid because I was going to really commit myself, and I could feel the vulnerability. You know, you get involved with other people, you begin to intertwine your life, and then all of a sudden they have not only the power to help you, to love you, to take care of you, but they also have the power to hurt you, don't they? And that's the edge that we're always walking in this world, isn't it? How much do I risk? How much do I risk? But I realize, oh no, well, I'll put it the way Swami put it. He picked up a hitchhiker once who gave him a sob story about his hard luck and how he needed money and like this. And Swami is no fool. He was pretty sure that the man was giving him a story, but he also said, what if he isn't? How badly I would feel for not helping him. And at that time in Swami's life, he had very little money, so he literally opened his wallet in front of the man and divided it in half and gave half the money to the man. And the fellow said, well, you know, let me make sure I know how I can repay you. I don't want you to lose your faith in human nature. Swami said, what little faith I had in human nature has been lost a long time ago. He said, I'm not giving this to you. I'm giving it to Divine Mother through you. And if she wishes to return it to me, fine. But I'm not waiting for you to do it. In my own life, remembering that story, I thought, you know, people can only be as good as they are. We can be profoundly sincere, like I think all the virgins were very sincere, but some of them were just more sincere or more practical in their sincerity. We can mean well. We can actually mean it when we say it. But things happen, don't they? Because we're not really in charge. We're really the UPS package at all times, whether we know it or not, because there's lots of causes that we've put in to our consciousness that are waiting to have their effect. And many of them are unanticipated and actually unwelcome when they arrive.
to our egoic minds, but the soul always knows there's a reason here. Even if I don't know, it will become clear. So we don't really, if we're wise, we think the best of each other, we expect the best of each other, we want it to be that way, but it's really God we're trusting to come through. God is always coming through. That's all we're ever looking at. You know, when I'm there in that car in Italy and I'm watching the time tick away, and I'm just wondering, I wonder what's going to happen here like this. Nobody's doing it to me. This is just all God's Leela. Very, very easy when there's no capacity for you to do something. Very much more challenging when the illusion of personal control is there. You know, and that's why God interrupts that illusion in all kinds of ways. I mean, right now we're living in a tumultuous world. We have no idea, what tomorrow is going to bring. We share this planet with people who have very odd ideas of what is a good idea, and people acting out karmas that are unfortunate for quite a few of us. We really have no idea. Shall we live our lives on the edge of terror because we don't know what's going to happen? Where does our strength come from? Where does our happiness come from? When really it's different than the story that I wrote for myself, where does my joy come from? And how deeply can I go within myself? I've seen so many extraordinary opportunities for Divine Mother to use what we sometimes think is the hardest experiences to give us the greatest possible freedom. And I've seen bad things turn good, and I've seen bad things be bad. That's all. There's nothing you can do about it. Free died. Who was going to bring Ramakrishna his tea? It happens. Because we don't even know what the plot really is. We write our own story and expect to live it, and there's no harm. We do what we're here to do, but what we're really here to do is one thing and one thing only, which is to learn to love and to trust God. Period. And I ask myself all the time, because I'm a student of these teachings. I may be articulating them to you, but I'm a student of these teachings. I ask myself, why do I ever worry about anything? And I don't have a good answer. I think we're sort of hardwired. I think it's somehow neurological or something, or it's just the force of the momentum of karma, of wanting it to be a certain way, and all these different things. But that's been my main sadhana lately. Why do I ever worry about anything? Because I know I've spoken to friends sometimes when they present difficulties, and I try to reassure them, don't worry, something will happen. And of course, sometimes you misread that to think that something good will happen. No, actually not. But something else will happen, And when that else comes, it's just one more opportunity, to keep that lamp of devotion filled with oil. And just keep our eyes and our hearts and our minds on what you have to call the main event. There's a main event happening here, and it's all about consciousness. It's not about anything else. And everyone who's had the opportunity to see into the world beyond this one always says, oh yeah, that's right, that's exactly how it was supposed to be. And every saint and every master says, if you could see it as Divine Mother sees it, you would understand it's just nothing but light. And now we're coming into this dual season, which is it's darker and darker and darker in the physical world. I love, of course, this is no accident, but I love the fact that it just gets darker and darker and darker. And just before the birth of Christ, just before he comes, it turns. We've hit the darkest day, and now the light's going to be coming back. And by the time the Christ child comes, unless you're really tuned to the minutes, it's not a whole lot lighter, but we're going up on that side again. And then this wonderful, wonderful descent of spirit comes in here. The last few days that I was in Italy, I had the opportunity to go to the place where this great saint, Padre Pio, lived. He's a modern saint. He died in the 80s, I think. And he bore the stigmata. He was a Catholic priest. He bore for 50 years, he had the marks of Jesus on his body. And now I've lost my thought just thinking about it. Oh yes, this was it. He, from a young child, he would just see Jesus and Mary, and he would just talk to them and be with them. It was a long time in his life before he found out that not everybody did. He thought when you prayed, they just came. That was just the way it was. And on Christmas morning, he didn't call them disciples, because in the context that wasn't what they called them, because he was just an Italian priest. But he had spiritual sons and spiritual daughters. And those were clear relationships. He comes down to give the Mass. He's dressed in his I want to say costume, his costume that he wore to give the Mass. And he is carrying the baby Jesus in his arms like this. And the spiritual daughter who was there saw the baby Jesus. And she was like this. And he said, "Oh, you can see him." And he said, "Don't tell anyone." Like that. So there in the place where I was, they have a life-size, beautiful statue of him with a beautiful face in the very clothes he was wearing, holding the baby Jesus. Now, that's who we're trying to be, friends. And in the meantime, we'll get a little doll and we'll carry it around. When we first got our baby Jesus, which you'll see in a week or so here. No, the first one we had wasn't this one. It was just a baby. But I got some kind of, it was a midwife's newborn. That's what it was. It was the model. It was an anatomically correct newborn. And I told the story. I talked to it about it being Jesus. And then I just couldn't think of it as anything except the baby. And that day, I wrapped it up and I brought it here and I carried it into the car and brought it out of the car. And somebody said, "Did Asha have a baby?" Because I was carrying the baby Jesus. Not, unfortunately, like Padre Pio, who had the actual Jesus. But that's who we have to be. We have to give our hearts to it because, guess what, friends? We are always carrying the baby Jesus. Or at least we all have the possibility of doing it if we give our hearts to it completely. God bless you, my friends. Let's have a...
Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, oh, night divine, oh, night, when Christ was born, Truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love, and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for all men are our brothers, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus raise we, let all within us praise his holy name. Christ is the Lord. We praise his name forever. His power and glory evermore proclaim. His power and glory evermore proclaim. Fall on your knees. Oh, hear the angel voices. Oh, night divine. Oh, night when Christ was born. Oh, night divine. Oh, night. Oh, night divine. Mother of wisdom, mercy, and grace, grant us thy vision, grant us thy peace. Our love receive, though blindly we pray. Silently guide our thoughts when we stray. How many years so proud of our wisdom, turning from God, we've wandered alone. So many years we've boasted but madness. Now our souls call thee, make us thy